Hi everyone, let me show you this my latest application I built. It's called OpenWeatherApp, and basically what you do is you just search for any city in the world, and it should give you details of the temperature and the weather in general, and a little bit more information on the time, and also the longitude, that's the geolocation, longitude and latitude details. So let me try some cities here. So let me just try London, and let me see that. So now it says London, the time is currently 9:47 a.m. and this is the date, this is the GMT, Europe, London, latitude, longitude. It's giving the temperature here, saying there's clear skies, and it said it actually feels like -6 degrees. That's quite cold. Then humidity 81%, clear sky, and the wind speed, we can see that. So let's try another one. Let's say Toronto. Toronto, and now we can see the time in Toronto. It says 4:47 a.m. and it gives all the details too. The temperature is exactly 0 degrees with some cloud, humidity, broken clouds, wind speed, you can see that here. Let's try another one. Let me just use Abuja, see, and we can see the time in Abuja and the details. It gives temperature is 30 degrees, quite warm, and humidity and wind speed. And let's try another one, and we'll say New York. Let's see, that's New York. Okay, gives the it's currently 4:48 a.m. with temperature, humidity, and all that, right? What if I try to type something random like that is not a city? Let's see what will happen. So it says sorry, no records for city. Let me just try one more, and I'm going to say Lisbon. Let's see that. And now it gives the time. It says weather in Lisbon. Let's take see that, and it gives the temperature, humidity, wind speed. So really a cool app. I just like this the application in general, because it's quite informative, and we can see this button here. Assuming there is a time change and we want to refresh on the same city, we just click this and see now it changes the time. So it's refreshing it to the current weather condition and information. So I also like this because it's quite responsive. I made this quite responsive, so we can see it goes all the way down here. And so let me also view this and see how it looks on small devices, to be specific, and see that. Let me see an iPhone 5 SE, which is cool. Looks cool. Let's see iPhone X. Not bad. Let's see iPad Pro. And iPad, not bad. On an iPad, let's see Nexus. Cool, not bad. And Samsung, nice. So it's still looking good. It's pretty cool. So I actually made this from using React, NextJS, TailwindCSS, and I also used the API called OpenWeatherAPI, and this is the website openweathermap.org, and basically you just use the API call which is given with the key. I have my personal API key, and you put in the latitude and the longitude for that location. But there is one that actually gives you for city, so I didn't have to use that for the longitude, latitude. I actually use this for city. So you just put the city name, and it will get the longitude and latitude for you, and it works really nice. And the good thing is that there is almost like 10,000 to 1,000 calls per month, so it's relatively free, and that's what I use basically for the API for the weather, and that covers for this whole bit here, all this here. But for the time, And these other ones, I was able to use another API, which is called Abstract. So Abstract, like you see here, it's a automate routine DevOps with abstract suite of APIs. So basically, it does a lot of provides a lot of library for APIs. You can see the IP, geolocation API, web scraping, public holidays, phone validation, email validation, and a lot of other stuff. But what I was able to use was that of the time, and that's what we have here: time, date, and time zone API. So I was able to use this, and that's kind of what we have here. So I used this to call with my key I was given, and it brings out something like this. So you can get the longitude, latitude, like what we have here, and also the date, which I was able to kind of scrap. I was able to kind of modify to get something like this here. So and this other information we can see here is similar to what we have here, like this here. So that's those are the two APIs I was able to have access to: the OpenWeatherAPI and this called Abstract. So really cool stuff. So my project is currently hosted here in OpenWeatherApp. That's my name on GitHub. So let me just also show you one beautiful thing I like about where I hosted it, because as you can see here, we can see it's hosted on Vercel. And good thing with Vercel is that you can install any React Next.js, particularly Next.js application, and the good thing is that it's connected to this GitHub repo. So any changes I make here has a continuous deployment. Once the integration has been done, there's continuous deployment, and as you can see, these are some of the phases of changes I made, and this is the current one that we can see here. So cool stuff. So let's see the code I used and how I was able to build this out. So basically, I used Next.js, and I was able to use the head component. I didn't use that of the image. I had to change my mind. I imported Axios, so I installed Axios, and I used that for fetching the data, as we'll see later here. There was definitely use state from React, and I also use two React icons. So React icons is where you get some of your icon props that would help to create something like this. So these are the two actually. This is search, and this is for the council, like clear council button, right? So then I was able to create two components, one for the weather and one for the spinner. So because my internet is quite fast, you can see the spinner board. Where you have a slow connection, the spinner will come up here until this data is created. So basically, we have the home component, and the home component is the one that houses all these props, all these states, sorry. And we can see that of city, set city, weather, and so let me just start with city. So what I did here was to set the city, and such that if a user types in the name of a city here, it's going to store that in here. So if we come down here and let's look for the inputs. So this is basically TailwindCSS, we can see here, and let's see where this is the input here, and we can see search, and you can see heading says OpenWeatherApp, which is what we have here. The next is the search, all this. So if we look at search here, we can see where it's saying on change, then it's going to set the city to the value that is added here. So what that means is for every change, whenever we type anything here, and it's going to take all that and it's going to store that in here using the set city method. So it's going to store that in this state called city, right? So when that is done, then the weather state is meant to take in the fetched details for the weather. So but to fetch that, this fetch weather function has to be called, and if you come down, you can see that this is a form, and it's saying on submitting the form, run the fetch weather function. And how do we do that? We can see two buttons. The first button here is for emptying the city. So what that means is removing the value from this state. Like if you click this, it's gone, right? And this second one here is to actually submit that value. So that's what we have as the BS search icon, this one here. So basically, if that one is clicked, it's going to submit the form, and it's going to run this function over here. And once it runs the function, it's going to consider these two variables I created here. One is the weather URL, and that's the one that actually takes from the API for that weather this thing called OpenWeatherAPI. So this is exactly the same thing, and it's going to fetch from that. And this second one called city time URL is also going to take from the other API called Abstract. So it's the same thing you can see here, right? So it's going to store those data in here for the weather URL and that of the city time URL. So if you can see, I actually put in env values here so that you don't get to see my key. All right, so it's stored in the env file here. So once the form is submitted, it's going to prevent refreshing the page. Then it's going to set loading to true. As we can see, this is loading here. Loading is already false. That means it's not going to show the loading stuff I talked about. And if we come down here, that's the spinner itself. So it's saying if loading is true, then I want you to show the spinner, else you continue to instead show that of the data. So here it's saying that loading is going to be set to true, so that means it's going to show the spinner while it's trying to fetch the data. So it's also saying there won't be any error message set, and remember the error message is here. That's where we saw sorry no records for city when we type in a non-city name. And then we're going to say if the city there is actually value put into that input form, that city here, then it's going to now do the search. So it's using Axios to get first the weather data, and it's taking this URL, it's passing it in, and is expecting the response. And since an asynchronous situation, that is going to wait to get the data, and then it will then set the weather. That's this weather here state, and it's taking the data and setting it in there. So it's going to come in as something like an object like this. Then it's also going to set something we call cache, and that cache is actually a state I created here, which is meant to be like an array. And what's that meant to do? That is going to be used somewhere here, I think, in the weather components. And the reason we're going to see that basically, in summary, is just to store the last searched value. And anytime we are going to run this refresh here, I showed you this refresh button like this, and we can see it's 9:49. But once we run that now, we're going to see the change now. Now it's changed to 9:59 and 87% now. So once that is clicked, it's going to refresh that, and it's going to take in the last stored value, which definitely should be this Lisbon, and it's going to do the fetch again to store that, right? Basically that's what it's doing here. It's just saving that into the cache, the last stored value. And if there are any errors, it's going to empty that of the weather state, and it would then set the error message over here. That's why we have this state here. So it's going to set that error, right? So then we have get time data, and it's going to use this URL here, and it's going to do the same thing. It will expect an asynchronous response, and it's going to wait for that. And once it gets that, it's going to set that CT time, which is here. So it's going to put in the details for the time, and that's basically all this we have here. While these other ones are what we have here for weather. So once it's able to set that, then sorry, we're here. Yeah, it's able to set that. Then if there are any errors, it will clear that, and it will log out the error, right? Then at the end of everything, it's going to set loading to false. That means the data is ready to be shown, and it's going to then remove that that loading button, loading spinner, right? So now we have the what's going to return, and here I have a major div. This should actually be my container. And what I did here was I put a kind of like an overlay, made it black, and that is why we have something like this. Is a bit dark from the background itself. So the background itself, if we go to global.css, that's where I use Tailwind to put it in the body. So that's the background we're fetching, and that's where it's saved, right? And then this overlay just comes on top of that, and it's now containing all these other things here. And this is just basic Tailwind CSS. So the head is where we have the weather next app, and that's what's showing up here. That's more like the title, as you can see here. So that's where we put that, and any other metadata we have there with a link to the icon, and that's why I have this NextJS icon here. And then we have the heading. The heading is OpenWeatherAPI. I just styled it with Tailwind CSS. Basically, you can see that here. And then the search itself, it comes in a div too, which is also styled. Then we have the form, which was explained earlier, and that one's also styled, and the input itself, and the two buttons, as we can see here. So this is basically the form with the two buttons and the input, right? So then we have the weather component itself, and this where we pass in the error message, and then next we are now going to pass all this, like the loading. If the loading is true, it will show the spinner, else it's going to show the weather component and of the weather, that is weather state. If there is data there, then it's now going to pass in the weather component with all these props. So these are all props that are going to be passed into it, else no. So that's basically it. So let's go to the weather component, and we can see it's quite large, and I was able to use React icons there. This refresh is exactly what we can see here. That's the button here. And then we have the weather component itself taking in the props. I destructured that. And then this was what I did here, just to make sure that we have this presented this way and this way, right? So it's just passing the values, slicing them, and getting out exactly what we want. And these are all the months. Then we have a function for refreshing the data, and this is exactly where we are now ensuring that we have the last available data that was searched. And remember, temp in this case is actually passed in here as catch. So this is where we actually got the catch information, and that's the array with previously searched items. So that's going to now make sure it gets the last item, and then it's going to pass it into city. So it's forcing it there, and then we are going to run the fetch weather over here, which is all this one here. So the weather app basically is returning all this, which is what we are seeing here. All this we're seeing here. So styled also with Tailwind CSS, and we can see all that. This the weather in, and is getting this data which was passed up here, and is getting the name. So that's why we have like here weather in Lisbon. And if you come down, we also have, this is the bottom part of it, where we have time, So these are all the things for time. This is data time. So data time is actually when we get that for the time, and that for the weather is actually here where we have data here. So data for weather, we get the name of the city. Then data time, we get the time, and we can see all this is what we have here, Europe. So that is time zone location. And if we come to temperature, we can see the same thing, this data now, and it's getting the icon here, which is this, so to show the condition of the weather. And that's what we have there. And we have other information here. This was done to fix, that means making it non-decimal. So if we go back here, we can see that here, something like this. Yeah. So then we have humidity here, which is taking the data for humidity, and description, which we have here. And finally, then we have the wind speed, which is taking that information that we have here. So basically, that is the weather app. And let's just do one more search to see if that will still work. And let's say Paris. Let's see Paris, and here now -1, and that's the time. So you can go check this out. I'll leave this link over where this video is posted, so you can check it out and try and check your city and see how it works. And basically, I think I've explained everything here. All right, so thank you for viewing. Bye.